Revealed, the amazing and touching truth I discovered at my son's wedding after being excluded. Jim Harris stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his handmade suit that felt too tight around his neck. Today was his son's wedding day, a day meant for celebration, but for Jim, it was a reminder of his place in a world defined by wealth he could never touch. The phone call with his estranged father just hours before had shattered whatever spirit he had left, a legacy of carpentry, of talent he wasn't even sure he wanted to acknowledge, hung over him like a noose. He felt painfully absurd preparing for a day where he had been barely invited, as if his mere presence was a courtesy rather than a rightful place as father. As he walked to the wedding venue, the opulence of the estate loomed larger with each step. His heart raced, unsure whether it was from the heat or the anxiety swelling in his chest. What did he even have to offer in a space filled with polished shoes and tailored suits? Glances swept over him like an icy wind, haughty and disdainful. Each look threw additional weight onto his shoulders, an invisible burden reminding him of the expectations that were not only ignored but insulted. Something loud in his mind screamed that he was not enough, and it echoed through him like a sick drumbeat. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The ceremony began, a blur of flowers and laughter that felt foreign to him. He stood at the back, a silent observer. As he watched his son smile, exchanging vows with a woman from a world Jim barely understood, the hurt sank deep. The whispers, the laughter, they were like daggers aimed at his heart, reminding him that his rugged hands, rough with toil, were not welcome here. The weight of their scorn threatened to crush him completely. Then he heard a cruel remark from one of the in-laws, veiled as a jest, but sharp as glass. Jim's body tensed. The anger bubbled up inside him. Protecting his son felt both necessary and dangerous. He clenched his fist, wrestling with a desire to fight back against the mockery, yet he feared turning the day into a disaster. Would standing up for his son cost him everything? The dilemma pressed heavy. Was it better to remain quiet and let his son endure this? The realization hit him hard. This wasn't just about their barbs, it was about a lifetime of feeling inadequate in a room full of privilege. As the laughter rang out again, he saw his son's smile falter, and something snapped within him. Jim hesitated, seconds stretching into lifetimes, as he grasped the weighty decision before him. Would he allow shame to cage him, or would he unveil his true self, risk it all and create a wave of change? The choices loomed dark before him, as the newly unwrapped mystery of his father's legacy flickered like a dying ember in his mind. The ghosts of his past rumbled, and uncertainty swirled with the anger that threatened to engulf him. Standing there, at the intersection of vulnerability and strength, Jim felt everything closing in around him. Could he truly embrace what he discovered about himself and rise against the tide of disdain? The question hung there, entirely unresolved, as tension escalated to a breaking point. In that moment, everything shifted, and the path ahead became a tangled web of choice, the future spiraling into chaos. What would he choose? The message was clear, though the answer remained unseen. The air throbbed with a mix of laughter and violins, but all Jim could hear were the thumping beats of his own stressed heartbeat. In a moment of adrenaline-fueled bravery, he moved closer, defying the weight of judgment and mockery that lay heavy on his back. He would not stand by and allow them to strip his son of his dignity or put him in a position of ridicule, not today. Determination surged within him like the tide, rising against everything he feared. As he approached the group of mocking in-laws, a part of him hesitated. Would he truly stake his claim in this world of sharp wit and fleeting smiles? But the fear of remaining invisible, of letting his son down, pushed him forward. Would this be the moment of clarity and confrontation, or merely a flash in the pan? His hands trembled with the weight of potential fallout, Yet, clarity began to overtake his doubt. "Excuse me," Jim interjected, his voice steady despite the quaking within. Several heads turned, brows lifted in amused surprise, the laughter fading into a discordant hum. The in-laws exchanged incredulous glances, their condescension thick enough to slice through. Jim felt the eyes of the crowd on him, each gaze both a brick heaped onto his shoulders and a breath of encouragement. "You think this is a joke?" he continued, feeling emboldened. "You think belittling someone makes you superior?" He relished the shock that flickered across their faces. "My son is marrying a wonderful woman. You should be proud to welcome her into this family, not mock who he is." Every syllable emerged from a place he had buried deep, a voice of affirmation that seemed foreign yet exhilarating. More voices joined his, some quietly agreeing, a few scoffing, but Jim no longer cared. The risk of ridicule faded in comparison to the desire to protect his family's honor. The crowd buzzed with uncertainty, and from behind him, he could see his son's eyes locking onto his with a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Briefly, Jim registered the flicker of pride through the tears forming in his son's eyes. It shifted something within him. In this high-stakes moment between vulnerability and anger, Jim recognized the true meaning of legacy. It was never about the tools he carried or the craftsmanship passed down. This was about standing firm in the face of adversity and claiming one's place in the narrative of family. Yet, even as Jim felt emboldened, an undercurrent of apprehension gripped him. Would this moment of bravery cost him the fragile semblance of acceptance he had anticipated? The whispers returned, filled with murmurs that he couldn't quite grasp, but he sensed the idea of pushing back against the tide of elitism might ripple through more than just his own experience. Just then, he noticed his father, an unwitting participant in this play of judgments and rivalries. The old man stood among other elite guests, discontent written all over his face. Jim's stomach dropped. Was this confrontation also a revelation for him, a confrontation long overdue? The realization stung. He had sought connection, but found only unresolved bitterness. The weight of unfinished business pressed deeper, laced with the urgency to redefine not just his relationship with his son, but to confront his own estranged past. Was the broken connection with his father another layer of shame he needed to shed in this space, filled with reminders of what he perceived to be incongruous with his existence? The echoes of laughter returned, but they felt different now, more like an invitation to dig deeper rather than a reminder of division. Empowered, Jim took a breath and faced his father, an invisible thread connecting their shared history, an opportunity to confront what had haunted him for far too long. As their eyes met across the space, the room around him faded. This was a moment that could reshape everything, not just for him, but for generations to come. It's time, he thought, fully aware that whatever happened next would reverberate beyond this wedding, marking the chapter of a new beginning, a confrontation that could redefine their understanding of family. Would he take that leap? Would he finally face the long-standing chasm between father and son, no matter the consequences? The tension hung thick in the air, a loaded question suspended in time, waiting for an answer that he was finally ready to face. Jim took a deliberate step forward, the tension in the air crackling like a storm about to break. His father's face registered a flash of confusion, then anger, a well-worn expression that stirred deeper feelings within Jim. It was a mirror to his own past, one of judgment and unyielding expectations. Memories of whispered disapproval and cold silences surged through his mind, moments when he felt small beneath the patriarch's towering shadow. But today felt different. Today, he was no longer that boy cowering under disappointment. "Dad," he called out, his voice slicing through the ambient noise. It broke the moment into fragments, each filled with both apprehension and purpose. The crowd held its breath, some eager for entertainment, others seemingly sympathetic to the unfolding drama. He leveled his gaze, determined not to waver. "Can we talk?" The pause between them expanded, a teetering gap filled with unsaid words and old wounds. Jim rarely invited confrontation. He often remained the quiet one in family discussions, weighed down by the belief that his opinions would be dismissed. But today was different. He didn't want to continue being relegated to the sidelines either as son or father. His father's mouth twisted, and for a fleeting second, Jim thought he would walk away. But something shifted as the old man pressed his lips together, the sternness in his face melting into contemplation, a glimpse of vulnerability beneath the hardened exterior. "In private," he muttered, turning toward an empty corner of the venue. Jim followed closely, his heart racing. In that secluded space, the laughter faded into nothingness, leaving only the beats of their unsynchronized hearts. Jim felt every part of himself quiver, but he steadied his breath, pulling resolve from the depths of vulnerability he had uncovered just moments ago. "Why is it always so tense between us?" he began, painfully aware of how long it had taken to broach such an essential topic. "When I needed you most, you were never there. I just wanted your approval," his father snorted derisively, crossing his arms tightly across his chest. "Approval? You call that what I gave you? I spent my life working to make something of ourselves, and all you do is..." The words fell heavy, simmering with decades of unmet expectations, but instead of feeling crushed, Jim felt a flicker of the resolve he had summoned earlier. "Maybe I never wanted what you wanted for me," he interrupted, a tremor of anger amplifying his voice. "For years, I played your game, trying to earn your respect, but every time I stepped into your world, I lost a part of me. I refused to lose more." Each word resonated with him, piercing through years of silence and isolation. His father's face twisted in surprise, like the fabric of their relationship was stretching to the point of tearing. "You think it's easy for me? Just because I don't show it doesn't mean I don't care. Then show it. Show me that you care, try to understand. I want to connect, to build something real, not just for my sake, but for our family," Jim pleaded, his own vulnerability rising to meet his father's defensiveness head-on. "You push me away, but I'm not prepared to keep living under the yoke of your dreams for me." In that charged silence, the storm within the old man was evident. Jim watched the turmoil flash across his father's face: regret, pride, fear, and an inkling of sorrow. Each emotion fought for dominance, and Jim realized in that moment, perhaps they were more alike than he had once believed. The current moment felt monumental, a chance to disrupt the patterns that had defined their relationship. Yet uncertainty gripped Jim. What if this moment of honesty turned out to be yet another fracture in their bond? A flickering doubt gnawed at him, but the thought of retreat now seemed impossible. "Look," he softened his tone, "I've found my voice today. Can't we find a way to share it? Can't we learn together?" It was a question that hung in the air, drifting out like a lifeline, a chance for reconciliation. But his father remained silent, staring into the distance as if contemplating a choice long overdue. Jim held his breath, waiting for the response that could change everything, fearful and hopeful all at once. Would they emerge from this confrontation with newfound understanding, or would silence echo once again between them? The weight of possibility loomed large, offering no definitive answers, only the promise of a fragile, shifting future. As the silence stretched, so too did the tension between them, a palpable force that pulsated in the air. In that space, Jim felt the full weight of his decision to confront his father. He couldn't turn back now. He would need to stand firm within this moment of raw vulnerability. Every heartbeat echoed with the hope for reconciliation, yet tangled with the fear of a renewed rift. "Dad," he pressed gently, "I understand you had your own struggles, but what good were they if they pushed us apart? I need you to meet me halfway. Can we start over?" His father's gaze fixed on a point beyond Jim, searching for clarity in the chaos. Jim could almost see the gears turning in that stubborn mind, the battle between pride and the deep-seated desire to connect. Jim's heart raced, not for himself, but for the possibility of bridging their divide. "You want to start over?" his father finally said, skepticism threading through his tone. "What makes you think it would be any different this time?" That question stung, as it struck at Jim's core insecurities. For a moment, doubt wrapped its tendrils around his resolve. But this was the unraveling point, the moment he needed to prove he was not the same boy who hid behind his father's shadow, hoping for approval. "Because I'm not the same person," he stated, steadiness coating his words. "I've spent my life chasing shadows, morphing into what I thought would earn your acceptance. But I want to be honest with you. I'm ready to embrace who I really am." As the assertion hung in the air, Jim watched as layers peeled away from his father's demeanor. The kinship he yearned for was charged with risk, but so too was the mustering of courage to confront his father. Jim took a breath, recalling all the moments he'd held back out of fear, all the times he'd stayed silent at the cost of his identity. Why can't we redefine our relationship? Why can't we allow ourselves to grow together rather than apart? Each of us is forging our own paths, but they could intersect if we let them. For a brief moment, the hint of an emotion flickered across his father's hard expression. Uncertainty softened into something akin to longing, a glimpse of the hope Jim clung to. The edges of Jim's determination began to soften the rigid walls his father had constructed around himself. "I don't even know what that would look like," his father finally admitted, voice barely rising above a whisper. "Neither do I," Jim confessed. "But that's the beauty of it. We can discover it together. We can choose to be more than just what we've been to each other. It's a process, and maybe we'll stumble, but I think we owe it to ourselves to try, right?" As the dialogue continued, Jim began to reflect on the fragility of the moment. He realized that honesty did not come easy. It required vulnerability, the kind that could lead to even more pain but also paved the way for connection. "I know I've hurt you," Jim continued. "And I've come to terms with the fact that your dreams for me don't have to confine me. But I need you to understand that it's hard for me to live a life without your support." The words spilled out, raw and genuine. The reveal of his internal truths was electrifying, creating room for the dimensions of their relationship to reorganize. He felt a weight lifting as he voiced what had burdened him for so long. His father shifted uneasily, the emotion on his face a mixture of recognition and something deeper, regret perhaps. Jim was aware that they stood on a precipice, one that could either plunge them into a chasm of silence or propel them toward the sanctuary of understanding, yet the impending answer still hung in the balance. Jim had revealed vulnerability that tested his will, and now he awaited his father's response, the air solidifying into a strained expectancy. Would this be their turning point? Or would Jim find himself enduring another moment of crushing disappointment? As anticipation mounted, everything within Jim held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop, praying for the possibility of connection and acceptance. The hesitant pause stretched on, creating an almost unbearable tension that threatened to break the fragile moment. Jim's thoughts raced as he navigated through the myriad of potential outcomes that could unfold. Each one seemed to dance tantalizingly out of reach, whispering promises of both resolution and further heartache. His father's silence was not just an answer, it was a question in itself, echoing uncertainty and the heavy burden of unspoken fears. Jim focused on the weight of his own revelation, willing the moment to build on his courage, rather than slip into despair. It was imperative now, more than ever, to maintain his resolve and project the strength he wanted to cultivate in this relationship. "Do you really want to start over?" his father finally asked, the skepticism in his voice softened somewhat, revealing a longing buried beneath layers of defensiveness. "Yes," Jim replied, each syllable solid and unwavering. "I've spent too long dwelling on disappointments of both you and me. I want to see us not as adversaries, but as allies. You might see a chasm between us, but I see a bridge. And it's not going to be easy, but I believe we can take our first steps together." His father shifted slightly, a barely perceptible movement, but it ignited a flicker of hope in Jim's heart. The exchanges they had engaged in over years of silence seemed to lose their weight, revealing themselves as mere obstacles in his pursuit of understanding. In this moment, Jim recognized that confronting his father was only half of the challenge. The true work lay in fostering trust and love through genuine communication. "What if we fail again?" his father murmured, a tremor of vulnerability now seeping through that veneer of hardened pragmatism. Jim took a breath, internally rallying all his belief in possibility. "We might fail," he acknowledged. "But isn't that what life is about? Learning and growing? If we keep this cycle of disappointment going, we'll lose more than a chance at reconciliation. We'll lose the only relationship that ever meant anything to either of us." Let us try failure together, and then we can at least say we had the courage to see it through. The gravity of Jim's words lingered in the air, and he almost felt time stretching out as he awaited his father's reaction. Would it break them apart, or would they begin to slowly rebuild what had been dismantled over the years? Each second offered the weight of a lifetime of experiences, of missed opportunities, yet equally, the potential for transformative growth. Then, for the first time in what felt like eternity, his father finally met Jim's gaze. Eyes wide with surprise, but softened by a new light of understanding. "I never saw it that way," he admitted, his voice low but earnest. "You've grown. I can't deny that. I would have never expected you to. I'm trying, Dad. I'm trying to be the man you can be proud of. And I'm trying, too, to be the father you deserve," he replied, the conviction behind his words striking Jim like a bolt of electricity. With each tentative admission, the distance between them seemed to lessen as they stood on an uncharted path of possibility. The weight of their shared history hung heavily in the balance, but now there existed a flicker of shared commitment, a gentle agreement to take the first steps toward rediscovery. As Jim felt the stirrings of optimism rise within him, he couldn't shake the notion that they had barely scratched the surface of their journey. Yet the resolve to move forward had taken root, casting away shadows of the past in favor of a joint venture into the unknown future. Little did Jim know that this moment of vulnerability would lead to revelations about his own capacities and untapped strengths, an exploration that awaited just around the corner. A sense of urgency flooded through him as the words formed on the tip of his tongue. Could this be the turning point, where personal growth and familial healing intertwined? If so, they were faced with a new reality, one that demanded immediate attention. "Dad," Jim's voice broke slightly. "There's something about my life I haven't shared with you, something that might change the way you see who I've become." The air thickened with anticipation as Jim took a moment to gather his thoughts, his heart pounding against his chest like a drum heralding a climactic moment. He could feel the charged silence between them, an opportunity pregnant with the possibility of honest connection lingering just out of reach. His father, the man who had once held the authority of both fear and love in Jim's life, now seemed both vulnerable and receptive. Before the wedding, Jim started, pausing to ensure that the importance of his words wasn't lost. "There was something I discovered about myself that I didn't know was there." He glanced at his father, seeking any sign of readiness to hear what he had to say. "After all those years of distance," Jim continued, "I immersed myself in understanding who I am outside of your expectations or our past. I've been working hard, focusing on my career and personal growth. I found a passion for graphic design, something I never thought I could pursue. It felt as if my job was always just a means to an end." But now he hesitated, searching for the right phrasing, as he bombarded his thoughts with the weight of this revelation. "Now it feels like a voice that I can finally call my own." His father's brow furrowed slightly, processing the meaning behind each word. "It's a good thing. I'm glad you found something you love," he responded, the sincerity vibrating in his tone, yet Jim sensed an undercurrent of confusion. "Dad, it's not just about design," Jim pressed on, feeling a surge of confidence build inside him. "It's about voicing who I am and moving past living in the shadows. I want to share this with you because it reflects growth, not just for me but for us. It's about realizing that I can create instead of just consume." His father's gaze sharpened, curiosity piercing through skepticism. "What does that mean for us, Jim? What does sharing that with me change?" "Everything," Jim maintained, infused with determination. "It means that I finally recognize my voice and choices matter. It means we can share in a life where I am not just defined by our history. I've learned to embrace my own ambitions, and I want you not just to see me as your son, but as a man capable of his own dreams." As Jim spoke, he felt as much for himself as he did for his father. The fear of being rejected clashed with a burgeoning resolve. Jim could almost see the walls they had built over the years start to crack, revealing the potential for a new foundation beneath, and Peter's brows relaxed ever so slightly, a small gesture, but one that stirred hope within Jim's chest. "You're braver than I ever gave you credit for," his father conceded, gratitude creeping into his voice. It took me far too long to realize the passionate spirit you always had." Encouraged by the shift, Jim plunged into the next layers of his self-discovery. "I've managed projects at work, collaborated with clients, and even contributed to community initiatives in the area of design. It's incredible how many talents I've tapped into when I allowed myself to be guided by passion rather than fear." Community work? The mention seemed to filter through his father's mind, causing him to reflect. "You never showed did you feel like you could before?" "Not really. I was always scared to step out of your shadow, always striving for approval." Jim's heart bared itself in vulnerability. "But I think forging my own path allowed me to see how I can contribute in a way that matters. It's also allowed me to finally understand the parts of you I resisted." "Why would you do that?" His father's eyes clouded momentarily with incredulity. "You could have just spoken to me, Jim. We could have talked." "I didn't know how," Jim said quietly, the honesty tumbling out before him like paper unfurling. "I feared you wouldn't understand, or that it would only bring disappointment." At this, Jim's father stood stammering, old defenses crumbling as the emotional tide surged. Could he truly let go of the past to welcome this new version of his son? The silence that followed felt heavy with truth and possibility. Jim's heart raced. He understood now that this current moment required both of them to navigate unfamiliar territory. Each revelation sparked a force, propelling change not just within him, but trembling through the ground between them. They were already on the brink of something transformative. Jim could feel the opportunity approaching, but it increased the tension coiling in his chest. The fear existed not only in the unknown, but the vulnerability that lay ahead. "Maybe I didn't only fail you, maybe I'm also afraid to move forward myself." Peter's admission hovered between them, a fresh wave of understanding washing over Jim as his father's realization hit home. "Dad," Jim voiced, eyes wide, "if we're going to build something new, we need to face the past as well." And with that, they stood on the precipice of a conversation that could reshape everything, awakening dormant conversations wrapped in years of silence and distance. Jim was determined to embrace the journey ahead. But like any path worth taking, even the sunlight gave way to shadows. What hidden truths still awaited them as they confronted the wake of their histories? The walls of silence felt unbearably thick as Jim and Peter confronted the echoes of their past. Jim's heart raced. The vulnerability of sharing his growth opened the floodgates to a myriad of emotions swirling within him. With each revelation, the temperature of the room seemed to shift. This was a moment poised on the edge of transformation, but the weight of old arguments and unspoken grievances lumbered between them like a shadow. "Facing the past means staring at our mistakes," Jim said, his voice calm but firm. He couldn't back down now. The stakes of this conversation were too high. "It means recognizing that our history shaped us, but it doesn't have to define our future." "I don't want to keep playing roles that no longer serve us." Peter took a step back, processing Jim's words. "You think we can just forget? That moving forward wipes the slate clean? That's naive." The sharpness of his father's tone brought Jim's simmering confidence into question, leaving him teetering over uncertainty. "Not forget," Jim replied, his determination hardening. "But to understand it. To acknowledge how the past influenced us and use that insight to create a better relationship. It's about standing on what we've learned. I want us to build something real this time." Peter's jaw tightened, expression shifting from skepticism to contemplation. Jim sensed a small crack forming in the barriers that their years of miscommunication had erected. This was a chance, but he needed to press on. The path ahead was not only about shared understanding, but also about grief and reconciliation. "What if I told you I didn't feel respected when you chose to keep me in the dark about your life?" Jim remembered how many times he had felt like a shadow, inflated by his father's expectations while void of his own identity. It was his moment, the chance to voice insecurities that had long festered. "It hurt to think that my efforts didn't matter. But now I am reclaiming my voice and my choices." "Your choices?" Peter's voice shook with surprise, lifting one brow as if hearing a stranger speak. "You don't think I would have respected you if you'd told me?" "It wasn't just about telling you, Dad." Frustration clawed at Jim. "I wanted you to see me taking initiative for myself. I was so afraid of your reactions that it stifled my voice for years." Sharing my victories was out of the question when I felt like a constant disappointment, always trying to fit into a mold. Silence settled again, thick with haunting realizations. The muffled rush of Jim's heartbeat filled his ears as he weighed the possibility of Peter experiencing the same fears, insecurity, woven deep into their fabric as a family. Maybe I failed to listen. Peter's voice trembled, a stark contrast to his earlier frustration. Didn't you realize that my expectations were crushing your spirit? I only wanted you to be the best. The words danced in the air, potent with regret for what had been unspoken. A bridge formed from the rubble of their neglect. It hung there, a truth so profound it demanded acknowledgement. Yet Jim felt an unsettling knot in his stomach. Could this be another facade, a way for his father to shield himself from the responsibility of change? He had shared his deep-seated fears. Could Peter do the same? Sharing our mistakes opens us, Jim urged, shifting gear. What if we began addressing these failures, igniting the possibility for healing? If we want to create a respectful bond, I need to hear how you feel, too. Peter's face twisted with indecision, a battle of vulnerability etched across his features. You want me to admit I, too, was hurt by the distance? I was just trying to be the father you needed. That's it, Jim pressed. You were trying to mold me instead of seeing who I was becoming. That's why we lost each other. He felt something rise between them, a possibility grafted from pain-old wounds, pulling them toward a different reality. It was time. Time for Peter to unveil his own struggles, his own fears. If they were to transform this relationship, it had to be a collaborative effort, a shift in understanding braided from their shared histories. Jim, Peter finally muttered, his voice trembling. The time has come to face my own failures. Hope sparked within Jim. Yet uncertainty lingered, thick as fog, about what would be revealed next. What hidden truths had Peter buried all these years? The ground felt uneven beneath them, and the moments stretched taut with tension. As Peter struggled for the words, Jim held his breath, ready to be anchored in this vulnerable confrontation, or willing to let everything unravel once again. What other layers would be pulled away in pursuit of the truth? Would opening this door invite the healing they both desperately needed, or entrap them in deeper unresolved conflict? Peter inhaled a shaky breath, his features lined with a blend of vulnerability and fear. It's difficult to share this, he began, eyes shifting to the floor as if anchoring his fears to the ground. For years, I felt like a shell. I worked hard, thinking that if I achieved success, you would be proud. But inside, I was battling the feeling that I wasn't doing enough, that somehow I had failed you. Jim's heart stirred. Here was his father, a man who had often come across as solid and unyielding, exposing himself like a delicate flower in an unforgiving storm. But even as empathy flickered within him, doubt gnawed at the edges of awareness. Could this be another avoidance measure, a way to redirect the conversation, burying deeper issues? Dad, it's not about what you've achieved, Jim replied softly, cautious yet firm. It's about the emotional distance we created together. I want us to connect beyond these roles we've been playing. Peter looked up, meeting Jim's gaze, vulnerability now challenging the trepidation in his eyes. You're right. I sought success to shield myself from the truth that I felt lost and detached from you. I missed the moments in your life that mattered because I prioritized work over connection. The admission hung heavy in the air, resonating with Jim's own struggles. There was pain in that truth, both shared and unique, grounding them in a woven tapestry of familial love tinged with neglect. Do you remember the times when I was participating in school events? Jim prodded, edging further into the difficult terrain. I would look into the audience, hoping to see you there. But you were never around or too busy to come. Peter's expression crumbled. I thought I was doing it for you, providing a life you deserved. I didn't realize how little it mattered without me actually being there. This realization struck like a blow, revealing a lifetime spent chasing after success at the cost of meaningful relationships. Jim sensed his own frustration swell, but he pressed on, knowing that getting angry wouldn't serve either of them. It matters to me now, Dad. It matters that you are here with me as I'm building my own life, not just as a ghost in my memories. I don't expect forgiveness necessarily, but I want clarity, Peter whispered, his voice barely audible, yet each word carved into the silence. I see how I blew it. I just want a chance to rewrite our narrative. I want to understand who you are now, not who I thought you needed to be. Jim took a moment, processing Peter's yearning for reconstruction, allowing himself to settle deeply in the challenge. If we're to reconstruct this, it starts with honesty. Even now, I'm afraid that my dreams might not align with your expectations. I can't keep expecting you to fit into my vision. I want you to expand beyond what I thought was right, Peter admitted, a challenge coursing through his voice. Can we do that together, Jim? That question hung in the air, each syllable heavy with potential, a new horizon before them. The chance to develop a relationship based on mutual respect ignited a flicker of excitement in Jim's chest, and anticipation mixed with trepidation. Let us begin today, he suggested. Share with me how you feel, what your dreams are, your fears not as an authority figure, but as your father who wants to understand you. As Peter opened his mouth to respond, a flood of shadows flickered in his eyes, fear and vulnerability battling for dominance. A moment stretched long, stretching their connection taut. Were they truly ready for this? What if I fail you again? Peter's voice trembled. Then let us learn together, Jim made his vow, determination hardening his tone. Understanding is a journey, and missteps are part of it. Let us discover what we can build from here instead of dwelling on the past. They paused, the air vibrating with anticipation. Yet just as momentum began to surge between them, the distant sound of a door creaking open echoed through the tension, pulling both men's attention sharply. The unknown stroke of interruption hung in the air like a catalyst for what was to come. Would this new presence spoil the fragile connection reshaping their dynamic, or could it offer an unexpected opportunity for growth? Jim felt his pulse quicken with possibility and doubt. As the door creaked open, the figure that stepped inside was neither expected nor unwelcome. A woman in her late 40s, dressed meticulously in a flowing pale blue dress, entered the room, her expression one of disbelief as she took in the sight of Jim and Peter. It was Linda, Jim's mother. Jim? Peter? She stammered, glancing between them, her voice a quiver as the tension in the room thickened. What is going on here? The gravity of the moment shifted as Jim watched Peter's face transform from vulnerability to guardedness. A flicker of resentment flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by an all-too-familiar mask of stoicism. Jim could sense the vulnerability between him and his father hanging by a thin thread, and now this interruption risked unraveling everything they had begun to stitch together. "Mom, we were just," Jim began, instinctually wanting to shield the unfolding conversation, yet he stopped, uncertainty tearing at the edges of his resolve. "Talking about the past?" Linda interjected, a sharpness edging into her tone. "It's always about the past with you two." She stepped further into the room, her posture rigid, eyes darting from Jim to Peter as if looking for a culprit in a long-standing feud. "What happened to family dinners and Christmas celebrations?" "Mom, that's not what this is about." Jim's frustration bubbled over. "You're not hearing us right now." "I hear fine, thank you. And I see two men who are so focused on their own scars that they're neglecting the bigger picture," she retorted, her words like a slap not out of malice, but from a long-standing frustration woven through years of tense silence. Linda Peters started, but Jim could see the familiar dynamic surfacing. Once again, it was the three of them caught in this emotional crossfire. This wasn't a safe space for honest dialogue anymore. It felt wrong. Taking a breath, Jim positioned himself between them. "This is about us trying to understand each other," he asserted, the heat of the moment racing through his veins. "You've been a part of this, too, Mom. Just as much as Dad and I have been. You don't get to walk in here and erase everything we're working towards." Peter's expression softened as he noticed his son taking a stand, the tension dissipating slightly. Linda's facade cracked for an instant, her shoulders dropping, revealing a glimmer of vulnerability. "I just wanted to protect you both," she whispered, a mix of nostalgia and guilt threading through her tone. "You've both wasted so much time already." The revelation hung in the air, unspoken words swirling around them, echoing amongst the walls that suddenly felt kin to their fractured identities. Could they all become part of the same narrative instead of adversaries in separate stories? Perhaps this is the opportunity we didn't foresee, Peter said slowly, casting a cautious glance at Linda. To confront our truths together. We owe it to ourselves. The three of them stood on the precipice, each wrestling with a foundation formed from pain, regrets, and unspoken understanding. Jim felt an unexpected surge of clarity. If they truly intended to rebuild their family dynamic, it demanded collective courage and perhaps a rethinking of all the roles they had long played. What if we started by just sharing? Jim proposed hesitantly, inviting them into a space of vulnerability. I want to talk about where we all are right now. No more masking our feelings. Peter nodded hesitantly, while Linda's gaze flickered between the two men she loved. Fine, she relented, the uncertainty clouding her demeanor, but this better not end in another shouting match. They were edging towards a reconciliation that felt both scary and liberating. As they began to peel back layers of hurt, Jim felt an unfamiliar weight lift from his shoulders. It wouldn't be easy, but they were ready to confront their collective truths. Just as the room fell silent with their collective resolve, another creak echoed from the hallway, a sound that felt eerily like a continuation of the past echoing their present. What now? Jim thought, half terrified and half intrigued by the detour on their emotional journey. Would this be a breakthrough or another blockade? Another door to the past or an unexpected chapter ahead? The atmosphere in the room crackled with tension, yet Jim felt an undercurrent of resolve wash over him. This was their moment, not just his and Peter's, but a collective turning point for their family. He looked between his father and mother, their eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions, some mirroring his own fears. Jim knew that they were all on the precipice of something significant. Let's just start with honesty, Jim proposed, voice steady despite the rapid flutter of his heart. There's no need to mask anything. We've spent too long concealing our true selves. His words hung in the air, anchoring the gravity of the conversation that was about to unfold. Peter took a slow breath, his face revealing a mix of apprehension and openness. All right, he nodded, looking at Linda. We all have scars from the past. Jim could sense a shift. His father was ready to confront their histories together. Linda's expression softened too as she nodded slowly, acknowledging the reluctance in her heart. I've done a poor job of communicating, haven't I? She said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I had to shield you both from each other's anger and disappointment that brewed beneath the surface. Jim felt his chest tighten with emotion. Mom, we need to express ourselves, to shed the weight of the past. Only then can we find a way forward. With palpable vulnerability, Linda spoke first. For too long, I've been trying to fuse my hope for stability with the illusions I created. It hurt to watch the two of you struggle, but instead of stepping in, I added to the distance. She faltered slightly, her hands twisting nervously. I felt powerless. I only wanted to keep you both safe. As her words settled, Jim felt the heat of understanding bloom within him. It took immense strength to admit shortcomings. Each admission brought clarity and light into the shadows. He felt a shift in the dynamic, as if a tightrope stretched between them, lifting them off the ground they had been tethered to for so long. I get it now, Peter said, his voice laden with realization. I became so focused on success for us that I neglected the heart of our family. He turned toward Jim, eyes glistening with sincerity. And that led me to think I knew what was best for your future, without actively seeing who you truly were. Jim felt a rush of warmth blossom in his chest. This was the moment he had longed for. We're in this together, he said earnestly. We don't have to conform to mold each other. We can truly listen. Linda stepped closer, her voice trembling. Perhaps this is our chance to share who we are now, without pretenses. Let us not hide our feelings anymore. Jim's heart surged with hope as they took a collective breath. Since it's only fair I go first, he began, drawing from the courage he had discovered earlier. I've embraced my career now. Graphic design has become my passion. It took a while, but I fight for what I believe in. The pride surged through him, intertwining with fierce determination. And I've realized that it's okay if my aspirations don't line up perfectly with your visions. Peter nodded slowly, a flicker of understanding illuminating his features. I respect that. I want to know what drives you, Jim. Linda leaned in, her gaze intent. You're blossoming, and I want to witness that. I can only imagine how hard you fought to speak up. Jim felt a rush of gratitude for their willingness to engage. It hasn't always been easy. I've been afraid to show my true self, particularly to you, he admitted with vulnerability. I feared disappointing you both, but I've grown stronger through those struggles. With each layer shed, Jim not only felt lighter, he discovered strength woven through honesty. He looked toward Peter, sensing an opening. Dad, can we talk about you now? Not just your expectations, but your dreams? What do you see for your future? Peter took a deep breath, the weight of years fading with the question. Honestly, I've rarely given myself permission to ask that. I do wish to be more present, to nurture this relationship rather than continually running after success. His voice cracked, genuine pain peeping through those rugged layers. I've spent too long evaluating my worth through financial success. It's my turn to explore other dimensions of life. Together then? Jim pressed, wanting to ensure they were on the same path of discovery. Together, Peter echoed, newfound strength radiating from him. Linda sought to bridge their experiences. And what about my path? I realize I haven't pursued my own passions either. I want to figure out what truly matters to me beyond being your wife and mother. The enormity of their truths manifested in the silence, each figuring out how to reclaim their identities intertwined within the family fabric. We deserve to rise as individuals, as well as a family, Jim affirmed, hope fueling his words. Torn fragments can become a beautiful mosaic. We just need to commit to the journey. The room swirled with a mix of nostalgia and excitement, the promise of healing within their reach. Jim knew the road ahead would require courage, patience, and continued honesty, but at that moment, they stood united, no longer prisoner to the past. They may have begun in separate boats, but collectively they were charting a course toward a brighter future. As the conversation continued, infused with vulnerability and understanding, Jim couldn't help but marvel at the transformation taking place before his very eyes. They shared stories, fears, and dreams. They laughed and cried together, with each interaction serving to stitch together a tapestry of connection. This was the evolution he had sought not just for himself, but for those he loved, a legacy now forged through understanding and acceptance. Jim carried this solid confidence now grounded in hard-earned recognition of the valuable bond they were recreating. There was nothing left to circle back to. He had conquered past burdens and discovered a profound truth. Honesty paved the path to greatness, one built upon the bedrock of unconditional love. And with that realization, Jim stepped forward into the unknown without fear, fully ready to embrace all that his new legacy represented. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. Act fast. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories grasp the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.